All right. Looks like Kim joined us too because you start recording. That's what it is. Hi, everybody. I am Professor Cleveland. I teach in the Department of Ethnic Studies. I've been here since 2006. Uh, and I teach online, probably I'd say 75% of the courses that I teach, in particular, a course entitled Interracial Sex and Marriage, which is one of the most popular ones in our class, actually one of the most popular ones on campus. We do, I don't know, since 2016, we've been doing about 6 sections a quarter or term, whatever it is now we switched semester. So yeah, it's been pretty good and pretty popular. And it's a big film. That's one of the things that I think draws students to it. And so anyway, media is a very important part of online education and drawing people to it. So before I sort of get started, I'd love to know where folks are from. So just your name and what department you're from.
Hi, Professor Cleveland. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you, Luis.
Okay. Yeah, Professor Cleveland, I'm a part-time instructor in the psychology department.
All right, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Kim, can you talk?
Hi, I'm Kim and I'm from the College of Business and I am looking to develop an online course.
All right, perfect. All right, love it. Love having psychology and business here. I'm sure some of you watching are from other places and representing other parts of our school. Uh, I I don't know. I want to start with a question for you, Lewis and Kim. The question is, what is your thoughts on online education, in particular, well, online versus hybrid versus in person? So what are your thoughts? And when I say this, I mean it to be as open-ended as it sounds. What are the things that come to your mind first when you think about online education, when you think about hybrid, and when you think about in person? I just want to get a sense of what those three words mean to you.
For me, I think the student who would be successful in online would be very motivated on their own because you don't have to.
Go ahead, Kim.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I heard you. I heard you. Bucket just turned her mic on for a second. Hi, Bucket. Go ahead, Kim.
My feeling is that the student who would be successful in online courses would be more self-motivated because the interaction is through an electronic rather than in person.
Okay. Okay. So that's your online tech. What about you, Lewis? And Bucket, the question is, what's your thought about the three terms, online, hybrid, and in person? So that's sort of the question to answer. Lewis, do you have any thoughts? Or Bucket, you could share your thoughts if you haven't put Lewis on the spot. In case both of your mics are off, in case you didn't know, because that happens to me all the time.
Professor Cleveland,
Hey, Lewis.
I'm sorry. I was having some technical difficulties. I heard your question, but I'm sorry I couldn't. I just figured out how to respond. I actually have taught face-to-face and I've taught hybrid classes, but I've never taught an online classes, but I'm very interested because when I was teaching, most of my teaching was self-paced. I was doing a self-paced class.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that online appeals to me is it really is conducive to self-pacing, mastery and self-pacing in classes, which I was doing face-to-face, but I see online as another great vehicle to do that. Which to me is the research shows is a very effective way to teach mastery and self-paced.
Right. Okay. Love it. I love it. And it's true. It's true in terms of online. Online is very, very conducive for that. And it meets with a lot of the student expectations, which is something we'll talk a little bit later about in regards to how online education should work for them. Bucket, what do those 3 words mean to you?
Sorry, can you repeat one more time? It's a little loud here.
No problem. So I was asking the 3 words, online education, hybrid education, or in person. So what do those 3 words mean to you? What are your thoughts about them without going, trying to be too deep or thinking too much about it?
Okay, yeah, so I've actually had the opportunity to teach all 3. Typically, I honestly don't like online classes because you don't really form those relationships. It's a little more difficult to communicate with students. There's a lot of room for error. Recently, I tried to do something a little different and do like an online peer review because I wanted it to be the same as our in-person classes, and the students got so confused, and I felt like I kind of had to stick to like the common frameworks that already exist as far as online classes. Hybrids are a little better because you can sort of bridge the gap between, when you're not in class versus when you are in class. But then in person, I have yet to teach like a completely just in person. It's always been like hybrid.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. So the one thing you mentioned, which is one thing I wanted to say, one thing that I guess I was the one thing that all of them have in common is Blackboard, right? Now we use Blackboard for every phase of our game, including in-person classes as well. And so one of the key things I wanted to start off with is talking about how we use Blackboard in our with online classes as a way to sort of like help us help the students. And I think the thing that I wanted to say was that there are core functions of Blackboard that that I would suggest strongly you use. And I would suggest that you stay in the core until you feel like the class is developed enough for you to add layers. The biggest mistake I made when I started teaching online was I tried a lot of toys, and I tried them multiple toys at one time. Things from VoiceThread to using Zoom to I tried the Blackboard version of Zoom, all the different times, different things. And the learning curve for me as an instructor, but also the understanding that the technology has a learning curve for our students as well. And so it's really good to one at a time try the new tool so that you don't get overwhelmed by because the one thing about online education, I try to explain to all of our chairs and our deans, but I don't know if they get it exactly. It takes more time to teach online because you have the additional task of technology. So there's user errors from your side of not posting an assignment correctly, or user error on the student side of not understanding how to interact with the technology. And that's just extra time that's baked in there. That's just a requirement. So that even if you taught the exact same time class, it would take more time if you did it exactly because of the technology issues. And then the other thing you talked on Bucket, communication, which I'll talk about a little bit more. So my suggestion is, when you are looking at Blackboard, I'll share this is my 384 class. So the 3 areas that are used and students are used to seeing used all the time are announcements. And for me, I use announcements sort of like lectures. So I put in them all the stuff that I would put in my lectures, definition of terms, thematically introduce them where we're going. Sometimes I'll put the timeline pieces in there. I'll introduce them to important characters that I'll read about within the text that we're doing. And at the end of each of them, I'll tell them what they should go look for in the course material and what things they should look for in discussion, which are the other 2 major sections I suggest that we use. So since students are used to them, announcements are a great place to give them the setup for a module or for a week, depending on how you structure your syllabus. But it should be reflective of your syllabus and provide them a sense of what's happening for the week. And a clear thing I got from my QM training was to make sure it is all aligned, which means that the things you put in your announcement should line up with the things you have in your course material and things you have in your discussion as well. And so this is Module 7. The Module 7, The Namesake is one of the films that we use in the class. Thematically, we were talking about power, so I give them a definition. I found, especially for my ESL students, these definitions really help because otherwise I'm telling them things that I assume they understand, they know the meaning to, and they may not necessarily get what I mean by power. So obviously there's 40 different definitions of power, and I choose the ones that fit with the theme that we're focusing on. And then I sort of introduced them to the movie that I reflect upon the movie we talked about the last week. My Big Fat Greek Wedding was from the last week. And then I tie it into the current themes and topics for this week. And so basically, like I say, it's like a lecture. I bridge the gap from the last lesson to this lesson. I give them some terms that are important, and thematically I lay out the things that are important. And sometimes I'll underscore a timeline if it's important to give them historical points or characters. In this instance, they're characters from the film that I present as well. So the other section that I suggest, the second of the three, is course materials. So course material section is generally the place where I put my technical information at. It's where the quizzes are housed. It's where most assignments come from. You can set up quizzes here. Quizzes are, one of those assessment tools that are easily done by Blackboard and things that are super intuitive. It makes sense. So that's a tool I suggest using first. Like quizzes and discussion boards are the easiest tools to understand and use. And I think those are the first layers you want to lay down if you're approaching, building a class. So I'm going to get to Module 7. So Module 7 is, aligned with our announcement. So here I lay out the movie for the week, the reading for the week. I give them a couple of links. And then I also let them know that what assignment is due. And so this week they have a discussion forum assignment. And so I hyperlink that assignment again with the idea of aligning everything, which means that in every place they go, they can find information that sort of leads them back to the other stuff they need to do. So if they click on the discussion board forum, they get to the forum for that week, right? They can also access it by going through discussions and scrolling down to the week. And that's the week 10 discussion forum 4. And so they can access it through this way as well. But those three elements, I would say, are the core of an online class. And I know it's probably duh because all of you guys probably use that, but I'm saying that those are the only ones that everyone uses. Other than that, people have groups. Sometimes there's so many wonderful functions we can play with. But my strong suggestion is when you're starting off developing a course, as I did when I started developing a course, well, I didn't. So I started developing a course and I started playing with a whole bunch of tools. And what I found is that I was like, you should always start with these tools. So you could probably get through your first class, with announcements, discussion boards, and course materials as assessments. If you need to post an assignment, you can link to SafeAssign through there, which is the Blackboard version of Turnitin. Basically, it's a way to sort of take papers. So basically, you can have your essays, quizzes, and discussion boards. Those are the assessment tools that I think are the base level. And then I suggest that you play with something new after that every term. And I say that because the tools are ever evolving. And one of the greatest parts about me and my partnership with the online campus has been that they have introduced me through workshops, through the work I did with QM. There's a lot of faculty learning communities you can be a part of to be able to sort of play with new stuff that may be able to do the things you tried to do better, right? And so that's sort of my suggestion in terms of building tools in Blackboard. I don't know if you have any questions about that or want to share maybe your thoughts. You may say, Cleveland, I don't agree with you, because obviously that's one of the coolest parts about being an academic. We had a freedom to sort of do things our own way. But this is what I'm giving you as my experience as best practice. Love to discuss it with you all.
Professor Cleveland, this is Lou Lewin. I was going to ask you, this is a pretty mundane question, but what do you think is the best way to learn how to, I know just a little bit about Blackboard. I've used it in hybrid classes, but I've never posted any like quizzes or exams online. What do you think is the best way to do that, to learn how to do that? Does Blackboard itself have any instructional materials, or should I take a workshop, or what would you suggest?
The awesome person that's smiling right now is sort of the best tool in terms of playing with it. I mean, there is the playing with it part, which is, I gotta say, if you're not, open to playing with the tools, then online education is not for you. Because I have learned something every term. It's crazy. I was like, wow, I didn't know I could do that, or didn't know Grade Center worked like that. So she can delve into a deeper conversation about it. But it is so super simple, actually. So basically, if you want to create a quiz on here, then you go to course materials, and in course materials, they have the ability to set up assessment. And then, so basically assessment is the test, right? So you basically set up the test. You can create the test. I got to name the test. Test. That's my favorite name of test. And then from here, you create the type of question that you want to set up, right? Fill in a blank, true or false, whatever. And so you're able to basically create the type of thing you want to set up. You're able to, once you set it up, you can save it and then access those questions for future terms. So it's most definitely easy and absolutely worth doing. That's the reason why I say that in terms of the core tools, announcements, discussions, and course material are the core tools. And in terms of assessment, quizzes and discussion boards are the best first things to use, because they're super easy and they're built into the system. So quizzes are through here, discussion go through the forums, and they're easy to set up as well. So you basically just create a forum, you give a header for whatever instructions you have, and then you click in there and you start creating the test, basically. You start creating the discussion board. So you come up with the questions, students respond, and then there's a function through Gradebook which allows you to just go through and grade them all together. It's really cool. So you can grade them and just skip one to the other and grade them. So again, that's the reason why I advocate for discussion forum and course material, because that's the easy assessment pieces. So
yeah, that was really helpful. So that was really helpful, just seeing you click through it quickly, just to explore it more and play around with it. Like you said, I'll do that. But what about does the grading of these tests, is that done like say you have a multiple choice or whatever, or you have an essay, you want to, do you go to grading to actually, will the Blackboard automatically grade multiple choice tests and so forth, or?
It does. So if you have a larger section, it does, it's wonderful in the sense that the multiple choice grading piece. So there's two ways to access your ability to grade tests. Well, actually, so I usually use this. This is what I use to go. So I go through the grading center,
Okay.
and let's say, which of these? Let's say quiz. I do a syllabus quiz, which is automatically populated, right?
Yeah.
So I go through it, and then I have an attempt to grade the attempts, or I can just look at them. For this one, I don't really have to grade them because they're auto grade. So since they're all multiple choice, then they basically auto grade for me and they populate into the grade center. So basically all the scores for that quiz are here and they're auto populated.
Oh, okay.
But that's not all. I mean, obviously there are some that are different. So let's look at this one. This one is a mixture of multiple choice and short answers. So the multiple choice auto grade, and then I go in and I grade the other one, right? And so I grade it and give it whatever. This person got all the points, so they got 1 point for each of the sections, right? And so basically, I go in and grade the two that were short answer, and it automatically grades the other ones for me.
And
that's
and
your-
the, I'm sorry. And the grading of those short answer, that's all done through the grade center. Is that correct?
Correct. So
Okay.
both that and for my discussion. So here is a discussion board, right?
Okay.
So I can go through my discussion board. I can view grade history because it's already done. But so basically, let me see. This is not the one. So trying to figure out. Go back. I refresh grade center. Maybe go to one I haven't graded. All right. This one. Are they all graded? I think I graded all of them. All right. Let's see. This one. Change the date? No. Quick reminder. Edit. Where is, I'm trying to, you know what I'm trying to find, right, Monica?
I'm so sorry. Which one? What are you looking for?
Sorry, I don't know if it's because I've graded them already that it doesn't give me the option to grade from here for the discussion boards.
You could do view grade history, and that'll give you what you've done. Sorry, you're right. It's not going to show.
Right, so it doesn't show now. But when you haven't graded them, they basically, you go there and you can grade from here for your discussion boards as well. So it's the same thing as a short answer, basically. You go through and read, and then for each question that they answer, you give them a grade, basically. So this one may work because I have not graded this one yet. Let me see.
Oh, you don't have any attempts. Sorry.
That is the problem.
I know. And Lou, please know that I support your department. I support psychology. So if you ever want to sit down and do a one-on-one or a Zoom session, or if you all don't have time to create your tests, send them to me. We have a lot of student assistants all on campus. We can do the copy and pasting from Word. We can create your multiple choice questions. We can do all of that for you so that your onus isn't having to learn necessarily how to do that part, right? You're just focused on the teaching of the content. So please reach out to me, Lou, because I do support psychology as well. Sorry, just wanted to shout out.
I'm sorry. And you're who? You're Diane?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Monica. My name is Monica Munoz. I work for the online campus, and so I'm an instructional designer. And our entire department, all four of us, our purpose is to support all of you. And so what we do is help facilitate your Blackboard site. And you can also come to us for, like you said, trainings. We do workshops. We do department workshops, all that good stuff. Anything that touches Blackboard or online pedagogy or hybrid, that's what we do. And so please feel free to contact us, and I will follow up with you in an email after this.
All right. That's really helpful. Thank you.
So for psychology and ethnic studies, the three things that I'd say, are our core assessments are discussion boards, which allow for short answers, but it also gives them a longer time to play with the material. Whereas the quiz generally is designed to have a timed element to it. So then if you have a short answer that you want them to answer in a certain time, and it's about assessing if they've done the reading or if they comprehend in this moment what you want them to comprehend, the quiz is awesome for that. And then there is your assignment, which you can use Safe Assign or turn it in for to set up an assignment to like an essay. So if someone has an essay. So those are the three things that we use at most, and they're the core pieces of what we have to design. And so I guess what I'm suggesting is there's this desire, like I geek out on like these ideas I have about cool things I can do to add value to the class. I always say when you first do it online, please simplify that and try to stick with the core stuff in terms of assessment. Only because it's hard to calculate how much additional time you're going to add to your schedule because of technical issues if you don't know what you're doing. I'll give you a story. VoiceThread, Monica, you know this story. So I was like, I don't want to use PowerPoint anymore. I love VoiceThread. So let me do VoiceThread. Yeah. I set up VoiceThread inappropriately, quite apparently. I set it up in a way that allowed for people to, I don't know what, it's like allowed for people to turn in stuff in formats that they weren't supposed to turn it in. Like I just didn't set it up right. And so because I didn't set it up right, it took me hours to fix it. I had to find people's stuff and had to have Monica look for it because it wasn't showing on my side. There was just a whole bunch of issues. And the issues were all connected with the fact that I probably should have taken some more time to play with VoiceThread before I practiced it and introduced it in the class. So I think the key part of what she was saying is that we have to sort of create a space where you can focus on teaching the class, because that's work within itself. That's a full workload, and not where you'll be fighting technology. So I'd say don't jump on new technology. That's the big lesson in my preaching right now. Don't jump on new technology. Use the core functions, discussion, announcement, and course material, and focus on the core assessments, which are quizzes, discussions, and using one of the two programs we use to accept essays. That's sort of my suggestion. So,
well, your experience is really invaluable. I mean, in terms of what you're saying, you know, that really is going to help me a lot and help us a lot, I think.
I hope so, and I hope this applies to you too, Kim. I don't know, what sort of assessments do you use in your courses?
For our course, we kind of stick to online homework assignments and some other vendor programs. But I was curious, when you move to online, do you change the weight of your tests compared to other kind of assignments, or do you keep it the same? And what is your experience with Respondus, and how would you set it up?
So I would say academic freedom allows us freedom. You do whatever feels right to facilitate your class. I'd say if you have had experience with Respondus and feel comfortable with the technology, you still want to consider how students can interact with the technology without you there to train them. So what do you do in your class to sort of set up Respondus for students? I mean, what type of questions do you field from them about the technology?
I've never used it, but the faculty that are teaching online have different opinions on that. So
then to stick with the Stephen Cleveland philosophy would say no. If you've never used it, don't use it first in your first term you're teaching online. Instead, I'd suggest you use one of these other tools that have been tested a lot more. It's just like using the beta version of anything, right? You're always like, I don't know if I want to do that. Whereas these things have been super tested, and if you can use the quiz functioning has the ability to sort of intimate respondents in a way. And you, Monica, probably can dive into this more than me, because she's, this is her thing in terms of the design piece. So I would say trying to use those core things that I suggested as opposed to Respondus, though I suggest you play with it, right? Outside of the course, outside of your work as teaching it, because learning it while you're playing with it is bad. That's all I'm saying. I'm just giving you from my experience. I had bad experiences learning technology while I was teaching it. So go ahead, Monica.
That's a good point. Kim, to speak to your point about the controversialness of this, I think it has to do with the fact that Respondus, you can choose whether you want to do lockdown browser, which means it's going to shut the student out of everything except for the test. And then the piece that's a little bit more is the monitor part. So you can use lockdown browser where students have to download the browser, and we have a syllabus template that explains all of this, and we have a folder we can load into your class with a test, so that students can learn that they need to download a separate browser and they need to kind of go through this technology. Respondus does require that the students do a little bit more work on their end. So as Stephen said, it's going to be a learning curve, right? But we do have materials that can support that. And then the part about monitoring, that's the part that you can choose whether you want to turn on. Monitor means that it opens up the webcam of the student's computer and it records them taking the exam. So if they look down or they look away or maybe they pick up their cell phone, that all gets recorded. And if they do any suspicious behavior, it flags it for you. So when you go into Blackboard, you'll have 30 videos of all of your students being recorded taking their exam. And you can click on the flags or the problem areas to see what that student was doing, because it is automatically flagged. So it could just be that they, wiped their nose or something. And so it does give you the ability to then go watch the video that is recorded. That's where it does get a little controversial, because the student is recorded regardless of where they're at when they're taking the exam. So if they're in bed or if they're at the public place, that all gets recorded. And they do, for monitor, every student must have a webcam in order to be recorded. And so there's just a little bit more complexity around it. But if you're interested, Kim, if you want to, I can give you a quick demo on the side. We can set up some time and you can see if it's something that you feel comfortable with, like Stephen said, if it's something you want to adopt, or maybe you want to play with in like a master course. And then after you've had that first round, then you decide whether it's something you need or not. But again, anything with Respondus, you can always reach out to us and we can give you just a short spiel on it.
Right. But would you agree with my assessment that most of the stuff that you could do with Respondus can be done with the functionality of Blackboard in terms of the quiz world, except for the monitoring?
Exactly. You don't necessarily need Respondus because you can do things like randomize your questions, use question sets, right? So I'm going to say, here's 5 questions for chapter 1, only give the students 2, and then it randomly gives everyone separate questions. So there are different ways, like Stephen said, that you can use tools within Blackboard to cut down on the cheating and plagiarism, especially tools like SafeAssign, which will highlight everything that the students have taken from the internet or things like that. So there are a lot more tools that aren't as intense as Respondus. So yes, I definitely agree that they could definitely do almost everything except for that recording piece.
Right. And so to me, not stepping into the controversy, just thinking of you. So my purview of this particular moment is trying to sort of help folks sort of develop things that are going to be sustainable. And the next piece of what I'm going to talk about is about time management, which is the biggest piece of all this. And I think in terms of time management with Respondus, it is a lot of extra work you have to do, which means if you don't want to increase your workload, you have to design and build in a way to, like, how do you take away from the other things you would have been doing? Like, so you have to do, so the question was, do you make a different course for your online than you do for your in-person? I was like, hypothetically, no. Hypothetically, the exact same course feels exactly the same. It should be the same rigor, the same piece. In practicality, it's not. If you do the same course on on online that you do in person, it will be an additional time suck. And if your department's not giving you less students in your class to balance that out, then it most definitely will end up being more work. So what I'm saying is, if there are 50 students in the class, online, 50 students in the class, in person, it's more work online. If your department does scale it like ours does, where you get 5 less students if you're online, then that less students then make up for some of that extra time you have to spend on technology. That is the important piece to note. So you have to be aware of that when you're doing it. So my thing is not about whether or not that program is awesome or not. It's more about saying, just if it's your first time teaching online, the learning curve for that is far greater than a learning curve for how to set up the quiz using Blackboard in a way that makes it harder for them to cheat. Hopefully that answered your question, Kim.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Okay. Well, I want to jump to time management now. How many people have concerns about time management in regards to online education for themselves, right? The biggest concern. Like I have seen people absolutely go crazy. And looking in the mirror, I've seen people go crazy. One of them, it was insane because I first did it and I was like, this is going to be easy. And at first they gave you far less students because they were like, it's going to be more work. But as it's going on, I think people don't feel like it's that much more work. They're like, once you set it up, it's fine. But the reality is that there are technical things that happen. Blackboard shifts every term. So there are new things that happen and new fun options that you make without knowing or that may be set up by default without you knowing. So the one thing that I say, in terms of how to manage your time is to develop a time, to develop a schedule. So I know this seems dumb, but I'll say it out loud. When you do your course material, your learner material, just to have a time every week that you're updating that material, right? For the course, it's reflective of where you are. I've found that when I teach the same class again, it doesn't mean that I don't need to update my learner material because sometimes the class moves faster or slower. Sometimes there's just new stuff that you want to put in there. Sometimes feedback from students tell you that section really sucks and you need to change it, right? So there's a lot of things to go. So I would say the first step for time management is for you to have a schedule in which you do things. Now, you may think that that's all about you. It's really not. The reason why it's not just about you, but it's also for the students. So if they know that every week on Mondays is when you are updating the announcement and you update the course material and you update so that they get into that rhythm, even if you don't say it. Like for me, I always in my syllabus leave myself freedom to turn it in by a certain date, but they get into the rhythm of knowing when I'm actually going to do it because I keep it consistent. And I found that students really respond well to that. The other piece, so setting up regular posting of material, but also the streamlining how you post material, right? One of the things that I've done over the course of the last, I don't know, it feels like forever, working with Monica and Bernie before Monica, was looking at setting up my course material section in a way that sort of is aligned with the rest of the class. So one of the things I did when we transitioned from quarters to semesters is I moved away from sort of just laying things out by week, but also using modules as a way to capture a collection of thoughts or focus for a set of weeks. And so part of the thing that I did in terms of this, so I post these things weekly. And so the things that I have to do weekly are the three things I told you about. Like I go to the announcement every week. So for beginning of this module, I do one announcement for the whole module. So I don't do different ones for each module. And then then in my course material section, after I set up that module, let's say I go to week 10 or to module 10, it covers week 13 through 16. So basically here, week 13 pops up for them, and that tells them there's nothing except for the quiz. And then they have a link to the quiz here, which is set up in Blackboard. So that's for week 13 of 13 through 16. And in week 14, which is the last assignment of the term, they have the discussion forum. And so they have that set up. And then they click through, and again, I go and make sure the questions have been updated. And then after that, that's the end of the new assessments for the term. So week 15 and 16 will be focused on the final essay assignment that's here. I use Turnitin for that assignment. But basically, when these things pop up, they all set to pop up at 12 o'clock on Monday. So I set my timers at the beginning of the terms to pop up on 12 on Mondays. And then every Sunday night, I update them. So I make sure that the thing that I thought I was going to pop up when I set it all up in the beginning works. So it usually is a fairly intense for me first week and first week, because I found setting up all that stuff ahead of time saves me time as I move forward in the term. But then you make adjustments as you go when new things come up and things get lost. So number one is the schedule. Number two is student communications. Now, student communication is one of the most unpredictable and taxing part of this. And so, again, crafting a weekly schedule for when you get back to them. Our department bucket, I don't know if you know, we have 72 hours to respond to a student communication. It's sort of our agreement. And so I set up my week where I'd have 3 times a week where I do student communication responses. Not like I don't do it other times, but where there's, I have an hour and a half set up where I just do email responses to make sure I clear emails or clear posts and Q&A. So that's sort of the way I schedule it out. And then the other thing that I do is I don't allow students to email me unless it's a personal emergency thing. If there's something that is personal, like, I got sick, I'm pregnant, got in a car accident, family member died, that stuff they can email me about. Otherwise, I keep it on Q&A. And that, what I learned by doing this is twofold. First of all, I know that I have to check Q&A every week. As opposed to my mailbox. I don't know how many emails you guys get today, but I am overwhelmed sometimes by the number of emails that I get. So I know I can check Q&A every turn. I can see if there's anybody who has new questions for me. So I usually every day will check and see if there's anyone there. I don't respond to them unless it's urgent. Usually if I see something that's like urgent, I'll click on it. Otherwise, I respond to them during the time that I have set forth, but I know that it's all here. And the second thing that this provides is a record that's easy to track. It's one place where all the records of communication. So if a student say, hey, she never got back to me, you can say, well, here, it's all here. You can look here, you can click all of them, you can collect them. This is the thing that I like most about it. You can filter them. So then you could go in here by name and I can say, every time that I've talked to Tyson Young in communication is here, right? And so I found this tool makes it really streamlined in terms of having a record for your communication. So I ask students to use Q&A for everything that's general and for most questions. And I say if they email me to post a note in Q&A for me to go check my email so that then it doesn't get lost. Because sometimes things just get lost in a box or, Cal State sends a lot of stuff out. So those are the 2 tools that I give you in terms of time management. The number one is setting a schedule for posting learner material, setting a schedule for when you communicate, and then the second piece is pushing all communication through the Q&A form, which is it's basically I have a Q&A form that's underneath the discussion section. And that's the place that I ask for students to communicate with me. The other tool that I set up for them, which is something that they find helpful actually, is a student lounge, I call it. But it's basically just a place where students can talk to each other. So sometimes they have a question like, where do you find that movie? Or I couldn't get, what was the assignment this week? And so we create that space for them to be able to talk to each other and ask and answer each other's questions. All right. So those are the 2. I have one more thing I want to add, but before I add that thing, and it's specifically on time management, I want to see if you have any questions about my 2 pieces of advice in regards to scheduling and funneling communication for students.
I have a question.
Sure.
So do you describe what these spaces are used for in the syllabus, or how do students know what the Q&A is for versus the student lounge?
Got it. So I try to align it in the sense of like the QM, I don't know, yeah, quality management is like it's sort of a certification for online teaching, and it's really all about aligning everything. So there is mention in the syllabus about how to communicate, and I put a note specifically say don't email me, use the Q&A form for all of your blah, blah, blah. And then there's a technology link about how to use it. And then in announcements, on my first announcement, I also tell them that's the best practice. So That's the thing for every class that I teach. This is the place, the first thing they see, and I do it not only as I post it as an announcement, but I also post it as I send it as a email. So my first announcement of the term is, please don't look at the screen or you'll get nauseous as I zoom past everything. So first I welcome them and I sort of lay out what my expectations are in terms of online hours. Is this one, where is it? Oh, the second one here. Here you go. This one here sort of talks about reading the syllabus. Yes. No emails to me personally. Instead, use the Q&A forum. And so this is the place. So I introduce them to what the expectations of the class are. I tell them when the announcements are going to be posted. I tell them if anything's unclear, they should communicate with me and not sit there lost. So please tell me. And I say, always remember to stay away from personal text. I put this note in because a couple of times I had students critique each other harshly. So it's like, let's be good on that. So that's how I do it in terms of communicating it. I also I have an intro video, which I use as a way to do it. And so it's part of the things I talk about in the intro video as well.
Thank you.
No problem. But simple answer, Beckett, is as many places as you can. Like everywhere that you can, especially in the first week. In the first week, just anywhere you can post to tell them, please use it this way. This is how it works. And then the thing that we're doing this term is I have really been communicating with students a lot more. I think I've come from a school where my teachers were like, buddy, you're in charge of your own time management. Do it or die. And I think that a lot of our students don't necessarily have those skill sets. And so I was forced to have those skill sets as a first generation college student because my teachers didn't accept it. But I think that the expectation here, or the reality here, is if we don't help them, a lot of times they just fall down. So I really, really have been exceptionally communicative. And so part of that is like, hey, I noticed that you have not posted in Student Lounge. I require a post in Student Lounge as their first thing. That's another thing. So I have an assignment. I guess I didn't say that. That's another thing I do. So the Student Lounge intro is the first assignment that they have. So they have to post an introduction to themselves in the Student Lounge. So that's one of the ways I assess them, is that I make them use it.
Yeah, because I'm sort of rethinking. So I just tell them, like, any questions they have, just email me. And my emails come to my phone and I just respond right away. But then you just get inundated with emails all day, every day, Well,
you gotta, if you don't take care of yourself, like, this is the burnout thing. When you first start, I did that. I responded to everyone, all the discussion board postings. I was at it. And then I added up my hours one day and I was like, wow, this is not sustainable. Like, I can't do 80-hour weeks every week just to respond. So getting it to your phone is crazy. Unless, again, you have it there in case there's an emergent thing, right? But I think, using Q&A is awesome, especially if you do it in combination with the notion that I will take 72 hours to respond. Then you set the norm for them. If you respond to them within 2 hours, you've set a norm for them, which is not sustainable. In terms of time management, student communication is most definitely, you can get sucked in. So, yes. All right. So we got a couple more minutes, and I would have a third thing on time management that I would like to give you. And it's really an important thing to think about before you comes up. Develop a clear sense of what your policies are going to be on extra credit, makeup work, and late assignments, and stick to it. Because if you don't have it set in your head, they're going to ask you and tell you their stories. And I'm telling you, I've been here for I guess 13 years now, so I've heard so many stories that it doesn't move me like it used to. But the first time somebody told me that their parents died, I remember feeling like, whatever you need to do, right? Now I'm much more like, perfect. Let me get the proof, and here's our plan. And you got to stick to the plan. And if you blow the plan, then you can't not turn it in, right? Unless you've completed, I think our policy is 60% of the work, or somewhere, I can't remember. I think it's 60% of work in the class. I can't give you an incomplete. So if it's Week 2, you probably should withdraw, right? And deal with your family stuff because that's the most important stuff. And that's a hard thing to do because we want to fix things, and that's sort of our idea, right? But it's just not a sustainable practice to have multiple students in your class who really don't have a way to pass your class because they missed so much stuff. And if you don't set deadlines, they'll be turning in week 1 through 7 assignments. And so while you're grading week 8 assignments, you'll also be, it's just, in terms of my grading too, in terms of scheduling, our department, I think it's 10 days you have to get back to students after the assignment due date. So for me, I don't start grading till day 7 because I give myself time for them to turn in stuff. Because another time management thing is to grade in clusters. It's easier. So when my head is on a short essay, I grade the short essay, and then I can move on. And so, but if you allow for a lot of makeup work, it increases your workload. That's all I'm saying. And you decide for yourself if you want to do that or not. But that's an important thing to think about. Otherwise, it'll creep on you. So that was my third thing: is decide for yourself what your makeup, late, and extra credit policies are, and stick to them. Because that's a part of a schedule. And I think in the end, setting these schedules really allows you to fulfill on a promise you're making to your students. And if you don't, sometimes you'll make promises that you can't fulfill, and you don't want to do that to them or to yourself. So that's it in terms of my time management thing. Make a schedule, set up a way for communication to funnel in, and set expectations in regards to communication. And lastly, set a policy for yourself on how you handle late work, makeup work, and extra credit before the term begins so that you're not doing it on the fly. Because the truth is, if you say yes to one student, in regards to fairness, you have to say yes to all of them. And if it's not sustainable, if everybody decides to do extra credit that you got to grade, or if it's not sustainable for everybody to turn it in late, or to be able to do a makeup, so you have to grade the paper you just graded again for your entire class. If you can't sustain that, which you have to assess for yourself, then you have to say no. All right, that's what I got. Any questions about that?
I thought that was very good. I've learned that the hard way. All the stuff you said.
It is. It's painful when it happens. It's painful when it happens.
But yeah, I think those are good guidelines. Really, very good.
All right. So in review, we talked about Blackboard and approaching it with the core functions first, looking at announcements, course material, and discussions as the core tools that all students have a bit of literacy on, which means they're the best tools to use because you don't have as much technical time. Assessment-wise, discussion boards for short answers that you want to give a little more time to, quizzes for short answers and questions that you want to time, or if you need to work to, like what Kim's talking about, to make sure that people are not cheating, to be able to create different question sets and different things to be able to randomize it is another great use of that tool. And then lastly, using SafeAssign or Turnitin as a tool for your essay acceptance. Though I use Turnitin, I would advocate strongly for SafeAssign because it's connected to Blackboard, and so it's one less level of technical headache. And then after that part, we talked about time management, and I gave you 3 tools to use in regards to time management. Number 1, setting up a schedule that you use for when you post learning material, when you grade learning material, when you communicate with students, setting up a rhythm for that, and setting expectations both in writing and in actions that stick and support with that. Then the last piece of that I suggest is coming up with a policy for yourself. Oh, I forget, funneling student communication. So funneling student communication through Q&A tool, which allows you to have a record, but also it allows you to sort of prioritize certain messages over the message saying that you need to take a quiz or a survey for the university, right? You can prioritize the student needs over those by having it all in one spot. Also have a record for it. And then lastly, decide for yourself, make up extra credit, late assignments, and figure out what your timetables are for facilitating those things. And that is what I hopefully shared with you today. And if you have any other questions, I can hang out for another 4 minutes or so.
Also, just to shout out the online campus, again, my name is Monica. I put Stevens and my contact information in the chat, as well as Blackboard support. So if you ever have problems, there's 24/7 support available for you. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Also, I think I support everyone's department that's on this call. So if you need to, you can always email me directly and say, hey, Monica, I need help with this. Can you teach me how to do this, or can you just do it for me? And thank you so much, Professor Cleveland, for sharing your insights of the last 13 years of your experience.
Definitely. All right. If there are no questions, then I'm going to roll on over to the next thing.
Thanks.